meters drop off. the rest of this drive, we're going to be reading from the Road and Track June 2018 issue. Their first part of the magazine is titled Just Go, and it's basically like large artistic photos of certain cars, and they talk about it. So, Wild Thing. The McLaren Senna is a caricature of the uncompromising sports car. It makes 789 horsepower, costs almost $1 million, and is named after not one but two of the most remarkable racers of all time. Then there's the bodywork. Yet the guy responsible for these extreme look, designer-director Rob Melville, conveys a different message. Cars like this are all about compromise. Design is all about solving problems. We have to find compromises that answer the problems in a way that suits a product's mission. Melville took us through the crucial balancing acts that determined how this street legal racer looks and what it can do. So engineers called for radiators to be mounted extremely high behind the doors to sufficiently cool the twin-turbo 4-liter V8. Their height, quote, was killing me from an aesthetic standpoint, end quote. He says, the solution? Push down the front fenders to lower airflow. That made it possible to reduce the height of the rear radiators by about 3 inches. Arresting resistance. What generates downforce can also increase drag. The Senna's tail works overtime to minimize that trade-off. As in other McLarens, its wing adjusts on the fly, but here the support pylons attach from above, freeing more surface area on the underside airfoil. That effectively yields the downforce of an even larger wing without the added drag. The setup almost worked too well in testing. The wing was so powerful it was delaminating, Melville says. Simplify and add function. Perhaps the biggest compromise from a design perspective is the lack of visual simplicity that has characterized McLaren since the F1. Quote, the Senna is visually complex, but it's as simple as it can be to achieve its performance results, end quote, he says. That result is hard to argue with. Nearly 1,800 pounds of downforce in a street-legal car. Maximum attack. For those bored by talk of thoughtful compromise, McLaren will build 75 track-only Senna GTRs. Quote, the beauty of the GTR was no legal requirements, and we didn't have to stick to racing series rules, he says. End quote. So a massive undertray mocks pedestrian production regulations, but helps produce some 2,200 pounds of downforce. And there's enough grunt, 814, to blow away most any GT race car. It says, I've come here to win. Melville enthuses. The editor's letter, Kim Wolfkill. Seldom a week goes by that an automaker isn't introducing its take on new, different, or better. Sometimes it's a clean sheet redesign of an aging model that's lost its way. Other times, it may be a subtle refresh of an existing favorite. Or, in an effort to capture a previously untapped slice of the market, it could be a revolutionary new segment buster guaranteed to take the world by storm. Some work, some don't, but they all keep us wondering what's next. The same happens in the media business, as brands endeavor to strike a balance between pleasing existing customers and attracting new ones, providing a safe haven for the faithful while remaining relevant in an ever-shifting landscape. To that end, this issue introduces what in automotive jargon would be called a mid-cycle refresh, a design update that injects additional pop into Road and Track's editorial mix. Same great ingredients, crisp new packaging, a hint more flavor. Speaking of staying relevant, this month's cover story, Breaking Free, illustrates how a clean sheet redesign can vault an aging star back into the spotlight. While far from over the hill, the Aston Martin Vantage has no doubt been ripe for an overhaul, and as contributing editor Chris Chilton discovered, Gaydon's thoroughly reworked sports car delivers a driving experience as striking as its bold looks. At the opposite end of the automotive spectrum, contributing editor A.J. Baim discovers the magic of the Revs Institute, the cornerstone of one of man's missions to encourage the continued study, understanding, and appreciation of the automobile. In his feature, Preservation Hall, Baim visits with Reeves founder Miles Collier, who guides him around his astounding facility, sharing insights on why the automobile will always matter. Ever adept at straddling past and present, editor-at-large Sam Smith revisits our friends at Ruff to drive a pair of special birds. His latest trip to Pfaffenhausen, Birds of a Feather, puts him behind the wheel of not only Alois Ralph's latest prototype, CTR, but also its legendary inspiration, the 1987 CTR Yellowbird. Hanging out at Ruff's shop, Sam wrenches on the first CTR sold to a customer and catches up with the designer of the newest car, none other than Freeman Thomas, all while getting the lowdown on what makes both CTRs so extraordinary. Whether printed page or crafted steel, established brands must continually adapt to the times. The strongest endure and thrive. They never lose sight of the history on which they're built, yet continue to evolve in the face of change. It's by no means a novel concept, but a friendly reminder for all at Road and Track to never stop pushing. Questions Electric, Teslas and Turning Points. This is Smithology by Sam Smith. The joke goes that we live in the future. You know, that cliche we trot out for anything amazing and tech related, mind-blowing gifts seemingly ahead of schedule. The telephone supercomputer that lives in everyone's pocket, or how Google's self-driving car arm, Waymo, recently announced a deal to put up to 20,000 autonomous Jaguars on the road by 2020 for public ride hailing. I don't know what's more amazing, that goal or the fact that in 2018 it seems only half insane. Or even just that recent moment one evening after dinner when my coffee grinder broke. I cracked open my laptop, and 2 hours later, Amazon Prime had dropped a new one at my door. The last one thrills me perhaps a little bit too much. The world of tomorrow shipped to you today. Or maybe just tomorrow's coffee, when you feel like giving Jeff Bezos one more detail of your private life in exchange for not waiting another sleep for more teeth-staining bean water. Funny how the mind can ignore the rational in the face of want. The novelist Warren Ellis once noted that the future sneaks up on us in the fringes of daily life. I like that line. It's just keeping a weather eye open for reasons to be stoked, weary, or both. Just like the Tesla Model 3, an affordable electric sedan that resembles neither doofy novelty nor commuter penalty box, with real battery range. Discount emotion and brand hype, and the Tesla resembles the similarly priced Chevy Bolt. But car buyers rarely discount emotion or hype. The Model 3 looks like a stylish adult device. More than 500,000 people put down a deposit to buy one. The Bolt looks like a cartoon beaver that ate too many donuts, and it isn't exactly flying off lots. I'm told the Chevy drives well, but to paraphrase Coco Chanel, it's a lot easier to sell pretty than it is to sell good Lord Helen, why did you wear that? The Tesla isn't perfect, but it's undeniably a milestone. Assuming, of course, that Elon Musk, Tesla's CEO, can meet demand before another car maker builds something better. Also assuming that he can keep his company from collapsing into a steaming pile of unprofit and technical service bulletins. TSB, a post-production quality update recommended by the manufacturer. At price time, the 3 TSBs list was telling. I tried a Model 3 recently in LA. My car was privately owned, rented for a test, had a few assembly issues, and thus was far better representation of real-world Teslas than some pampered media loaner. An untrimmed door seal with loose rubber flashing near the window, funky panel gaps, but the car was still impressive. On a fun-to-drive scale, somewhere between a Civic Si and an old 3 Series. I was reminded of a 60s Mini, in terms of democratization of a form factor and ideas around which others pivot. So many questions though, if you're of a certain bend. Good EVs prompt this stuff because they work like ordinary cars, no excuses or caveats. Your brain moves from the singular product to the situational long tail. Say, for example, that the gasoline-powered car becomes so uncommon that its infrastructure withers. Gas stations grow rare, fuel and insurance exorbitantly priced. Will I live to see debate over the legality of the human-driven gas-powered automobile? Will we talk about the internal combustion engine and human driving like we talk about guns, either backed as necessary freedom by an organization like the NRA or revealed as dangerous social float sim? Will people start electric motor swapping old Mustangs and Miatas just to keep them alive? The running costs on a combustion car too much to bear? One school of thought holds that the automobile as we know it will go away of the horses, a leisure item kept in specialized parks. In 2018, most people can't afford a horse. How rich will you have to be to go fast and make loud noises? I first drove a practical electric car almost a decade ago. Years later, the silence is still the strangest part. EVs are almost noiseless in traffic, so you listen more and focus on what you hear, which is largely the collective grumble of thousands of dirty little explosions exhausting under nearby bumpers. If you possess an ounce of logic, you think, hell, what are we doing? Digging up large bits of the planet just to burn them? Pipes pumping stinko gases into the air? Who thought this madness was sustainable? Of course it should come to an end, no matter how much we like it. Perhaps this is the thing with the Model 3. Even with issues of quality and company, the car is enough of a solved question to make you look at the calendar. It's a lens into a world where cars like it take forever. It feels real, and it makes you feel sheepish for want, however small, to hold on to the old. At the end of my second day with the Tesla, somewhere in West LA, I found myself at a stoplight behind a first-gen Mazda SP3. Its windows were tinted, and the hatch glass held a cartoonish decal of a turbocharger. Another sticker sat beneath that one. In a serif-heavy font, it read, "Blow me." Get it? Forced induction joke? The car was running rich enough to smell. I chuckled, and then the light turned green. The Mazda left the line with a fruity bark. I was reminded of a few old girlfriends and how those relationships felt as they approached their respective ends. That hazy sense of a ticking clock. where two parties realize that they would damage the other in the long run, but letting go isn't easy because the good bits of the relationship were so good. Irrational, of course, but then what love isn't? The first drive of the 2019 Aston Martin Vantage, breaking free. The new Vantage is more than swooping lines and V8 gruff. It's the future of Aston Martin, by Chris Chilton. Sometimes, but not often, you drive a car over a stretch of road and it does something so extraordinary, you simply have to turn around and take another run. Just, to be sure. So you do again and again. Maybe it's Dodge's 840 horsepower Demon lifting an axle as you launch down the drag strip, or Civic Type R, front drive but limited slip equipped, actually pulling itself into that curve instead of washing wide when you climb clumsily over the gas pedal. Spoiler alert, the new Aston Martin Vantage is one of those cars. There was a time back when David Brown behind the iconic DB initials was in charge, when Aston reserved the Vantage badge only for very special machines. More recently, Vantage has come to represent the least expensive way into an Aston. When the baby Vantage appeared in 2005, slightly underpowered and fuzzy in its handling, it felt like it hadn't quite earned the badge. Since then, the company has honed and improved that car, turning the V8 model into something focused and then stuffing a V12 in the nose to make it ferocious. But those Vantages, like all Astons of the last decade, were reheated leftovers from Ford's tenure, the automotive equivalent of what Britain's thrifty home cooks call bubble and squeak. The new Vantage, based on the same all-new architecture as the larger DB11, promises a return to the days when Vantage really meant something. So we've come to Portugal, a country where people still wander along the side of the road carrying bundles of sticks as if the last 100 years never happened, to test the new Vantage. Aston's design department is doing some testing too. It's pushing forward, breaking free of the mold that characterized the early 2000s cars. Some trademark motifs remain. The grille can trace its origin to the 2-liter sports of the late 1940s, and in the elegant and taunt profile, you can still see the echoes of pretty Aston's past. But the rear, with its kicked-up tail and discreet diffuser, looks strong and racy, much tougher than the old car. The freshest and most arresting angle is from the front. The broad nose and its tiny lights puncture a wide clamshell hood. When passerby open their mouths to comment, it's anyone's guess whether they're about to liken it to the $2.3 million track-only Aston Vulcan, or the Banjo Kid in John Borman's Deliverance. The door opens as in other Astons, with a slightly skyward arc and little effort. You drop into a low-mounted Alcantara-wrapped bucket and stare up at the windshield, feeling like a child trying Dad's hot seat for the first time, desperately hoping to get a peek at the hood unfurling towards the horizon. Where Big Brother DB11 goes for restrained elegance, clearly aimed at the more mature buyer, the Vantage's interior gives off angry sports car vibes. The center console is purposeful but also crowded with switchgear. There are so many circle-shaped controls, HVAC knobs, buttons for the transmission, the ignition, that leaning in to locate a switch is like eyeballing a spider. In other words, the ergonomics could be better. The beacon of comforting familiarity is the multimedia system, a pairing of dash-top screen and tunnel-mounted rotary controller that comes courtesy of Mercedes-Benz. Although some buyers might prefer a touchscreen, the functionality is good. The graphics are Aston specific, so you can mostly forget its origins. The media system is actually the least interesting bit from the Stuttgart parts bin. The piece you really want to know about is under the hood. Thumb the big starter button and the eruption sounds familiar, yet unfamiliar. Like hearing a long-lost school friend's voice out of nowhere on a vacation to Tahiti. Was that? It couldn't be. But it is. This is essentially the same 4-liter V8 fitted to the Mercedes-AMG GT. Although Aston sticks with the traditional wet sump oil pan rather than the GT's dry sump setup. Aston debuted this engine in the DB11, but with the smaller Vantage, there are about 500 fewer pounds of heft for the engine to move. In terms of power to weight, not even the mighty DB11 V12 can touch it. These days, we're used to new cars improving on their predecessors by fractional amounts. For instance, the Ferrari Portofino is 0.1 second faster to 62 miles an hour than the California T it replaces. Not so with the Vantage. By the time its predecessor, the naturally aspirated V8 Vantage, had grasped its last breath, it was making 430 horsepower and 361 pound-feet of torque. This one pushes out 503 horsepower and 505 pound-feet, the torque peak coming at less than half the crank speed of the old engine. Result, Aston says the new car is 1.1 seconds quicker to 60 than the last-gen Vantage GTS. You feel the urgency every time you press the right pedal, whether mashing it from a stoplight or summoning an extra dose of adrenaline at the kind of speed that would have left the old car red-faced, with an indicated 180 miles an hour on the digital display as we stroll down one of Portugal's always deserted freeways. the Vantage picks up speed fast. The drag limited top speed is only 15 miles an hour away, but from the way it's pulling, no one has told the Vantage yet. The last of the old shaped cars was all done by 190 miles an hour. Not a huge difference, except in the effort it took to get there. You can thank the two Borg-Warner turbochargers nestled costly between the banks of the V8, what engineers call a hot V setup, for the way the Aston hauls. This layout makes for a short induction track that keeps lag to a minimum, although the throttle response can't hold a candle to the old naturally aspirated V8s. Those turbochargers also dull the clarity, if not the outright volume, of the noises filtering through the cabin. But the engine sounds strong, and just different enough from the AMG appliances. Less hot rod, more hot culture. The Aston isn't obscenely quick. 503 horses isn't that much these days, and an estimated 3,600 pounds is. Its factory measured 3.5 seconds to 60 time is rivaled or beaten by cars costing less than $153,081. See the Carrera GTS, the Camaro ZL1, or even the freakish new M5. But the Aston feels quick enough in the context of a package that's designed to do more than simply get you to the state line like you're outrunning a rep. The Vantage is more nuanced than that. Which brings us to those roads, the ones that made us stop and go back, just to make sure. They're north of Portimao, fast and free-flowing, smooth enough in most stretches to goad you into pushing a car, but peppered with random craters and weird depressions that make you really wish you hadn't. A couple of times, we ran into those hidden depressions on the Vantage, the kind that are too close to avoid and have you lifting your ass out of the seat to minimize the anticipated catastrophic oil pan to road impact. And then, nothing. The Vantage glides over them like it's suspended from the clouds. It's astonishing how our car rides might not be the sexiest thing to talk about when you've been tossed the keys to a 503 horsepower exotic, but it really matters. Because not having your backside pummeled means you're happier spending more time in the seat. And because the more supple the car is, the more time its wheels spend keyed into the pavement, allowing your right foot to spend more time keyed into the throttle. Eventually, the Vantage will provide something for your left foot to do. Aston boss Andy Palmer has professed a commitment to offering manual transmission cars, and we can expect a stick shift in the next year or two. If Aston had fitted this Vantage with the arthritic single-clutch automatic that blighted the last car, we'd be suggesting you make other four-wheel plans for the next 12 months. But what's actually mounted over the rear wheels is ZF's 8-speed automatic, operated by a pair of exquisite aluminum shift paddles fixed to the steering column. This transmission might not slice through the ratios like a Porsche PDK, but the torque converter makes it a more smoothing town companion. And with the driving modes flick to Sport Plus or Track to engage the racier shift map, it has no trouble predicting your next move. With the cloud-in suspension and excellent transmission, you can get comfy with the gas pedal, lean on it firmly through curves, and you realize that the composure over bumps doesn't come at the expense of body control. Like the DB11, the Vantage features two buttons on top of its square steering wheel spokes. Left for damper modes, right for throttle, steering, and gear shift mapping. The Vantage skips the DB11's GT damper setting, which feels too soft for any remotely energetic driving, and goes straight for Sport, then Sport Plus and Track. There's a smidge of body roll but no understeer, so you can push harder on the gas and feel the rear tires load up as the corner opens. The tail will go wide, but only with the decisive nod from the driver. Given the go-ahead and with the stability system disengaged, it arcs neatly around. The electronically controlled limited slip differential fitted here for the first time, making it easy to moderate just how much of your view forward you want to take in through the door window, rather than the windshield. But what it really likes, and what you'll like too, are those little dances on the threshold of adhesion. Dances that show off the 50-50 weight distribution and teeter between neutral and slight oversteering attitudes, requiring the subtlest of corrective inputs and almost no loss of momentum. At the Portimao racetrack, that technique makes for some effortlessly swift laps. This place has many gut-churning elevation changes and unsighted apexes to learn. The Aston's got your back. With the stability control system relaxed and dampers set to their firmest, you quickly get a feel for how much you can push on that front end. And you can push it plenty, considering the weight and non-track spec rubber. Push the brakes too. Carbon ceramics will come later, but this steel rotor setup is heroically strong and feels so good underfoot. We're not sure why anyone would bother upgrading. Eventually, rain sweeps in. Faced with such conditions, similarly shaped rear drive F-Type becomes unpleasantly spiky. The Vantage remains friendly. There are quicker ways around a circuit or across a map, but the Aston's ability to show you a good time at all speeds and in all conditions is a trick not every fast car can pull off. The one area where the Vantage hasn't leapt forward is steering. Make no mistake, it's great. Roll away from center and feel that reassuring build and weight. In any other car, we'd be singing praises. But this is Aston, remember, one of the last holdouts for true steering feel. Like the DB11, the Vantage has switched to an electrically assisted rack, and like that car, for all its precision, there's just something missing. that texturial surface feel. It was good enough to make one forgive the previous car's deficiencies, which is saying a lot because boy, were there deficiencies. At times, we wondered whether Aston, jettisoned by Ford and lacking another automaker sugar daddy, could actually pull itself back from the ropes. It has. A 911 Turbo might be quicker, but this car is a tantalizing viable opponent, one that looks more distinctive and feels more special. It stands on its own merit to the point that Daniel Craig could come out and tell the world that Astons are terrible and it wouldn't hurt at all. This is only the beginning. Apart from the manual and roadster versions now being rated, it's possible there will be a V12 and GT3 style track biased versions that are even faster and more focused. And then there are the additional, very different cars Aston is preparing to serve up, including a hybrid crossover. A hybrid might sound like anathema to Aston fans, but it reflects the radically changing automotive landscape. As Palmer points out, Aston went bust 7 times in the first 100 years, and he has no intention of being responsible for an 8. Cars as accomplished, as brave, and as self-confident in their abilities as this Vantage will ensure that doesn't happen anytime soon. And the specs of the 2019 Aston Martin Vantage. The base price is of $153,081, coming from a DOHC 32-valve 4-liter twin-turbo V8 making 503 horsepower and 505 pound-feet from an 8-speed automatic transmission, weighing about 3,600 pounds, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, top speed of 195 miles an hour.